The King's Avatar, Chapter 1479 The Emperor's New Clothes, audio source wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1479, The Emperor's New Clothes. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Blue Rain's Big Defeat. This was the front-page headline of the latest edition of Esports Weekly. Happy won the battle, but the reports all focused on Blue Rain, as their loss on their home stage was a more interesting topic. In any battle, there was always a victor and a loser. Who won and who lost was never something too surprising. When Blue Rain played their away game against Happy, they still won in the team round, and only lost by 1 point overall. Yet in their home game, they lost so drastically that the points didn't even need to be counted. Group Arena, lost. Team Competition, lost again. The team loss was particularly surprising. It was on a map with which Blue Rain was very familiar, yet they still hadn't been able to take the initiative. It was true that people now had a pretty good understanding of Happy's play style, but battles were never certain. As the saying went, 8 immortals crossing the sea, each with their own unique powers. Everyone was striving to do their absolute best, in their own ways. But the feeling that people got from this battle was that as soon as Happy pulled out their powers, Blue Rain was abruptly forced down, gradually falling over in the midst of their struggle. The atmosphere in the stadium during the match wasn't too bad, but afterward, the criticism was overwhelming. After the final results came out, everyone suddenly became a glory expert. Any tiny flaw in Blue Rain's playing became a subject of loud criticism, proof of Blue Rain's failure to perform. As the losing side, Blue Rain of course knew the problems they had to fix. But too much of this deluge of criticism was simply people parroting each other. If you're determined to condemn someone, you don't need a good reason. It seemed that everyone who failed had to undergo an intense round of shaming, as though this were necessary to properly reflect their status as the losers. And this process of denouncement began right after the battle, during the press conference. It was less of an interview session and more of an attack session. The reporters wrote down in their notebooks not questions for Blue Rain, but speeches to express their vehement opinions regarding the reasons for Blue Rain's defeat. Strategy, tactics, judgment, performance, awareness. It was as if Team Blue Rain was stripped bare. They sat on the stage and were stabbed with the verbal knives hurled by the audience. Knife after knife. Everyone was hit. Huang Shaoxing couldn't restrain himself for long. Several times, he wanted to interject, but each time he was stopped by a look from Captain Yu Wenzu. Yu Wenzu understood him very well, both on and off stage. He knew exactly which comments from the reporters would set to him off, and with his excellent prediction and judgment, cut to him off every time. Other than keeping Huang Shaoxing under control, Yu Wenzu simply sat there and listened silently, still wearing a faint smile. These endlessly chattering people in front of them, they were all upset at Blue Rain's failure to live up to expectations, hating iron for not becoming steel. Yu Wenzu recognized many of them. Indeed, many of them had greatly anticipated Blue Rain's performance, had penned beautiful words for them, had fought written wars for them. They liked Blue Rain, so they had held high hopes for Blue Rain. The greater the hope, the greater the despair. However, Yu Wenzu simply listened, until the crowd finally fell silent. What there was to criticize had all been criticized, and, suddenly, no one stood up to say any more. The reporters glanced at each other uneasily, in this calm after the raging attack. They were suddenly keenly aware, this was a press conference. They were supposed to ask questions and spend more time listening to what the players had to say, rather than use the time all the time to talk themselves. Suddenly, no one knew how to continue. But at this moment, Blue Rain's Captain Yu Wenzu finally opened his mouth. Thank you, everyone, for the concern and kindness you have shown Blue Rain. Everyone listened in silence. The fact that Blue Rain's captain could say this made him feel that their bitter words hadn't entirely been in vain. Even if they didn't manage to get new information out of the players during this press conference, as long as they were able to get Blue Rain to wake up, then wouldn't it be worth it? Everyone, you are all anxious for Blue Rain, and you only wish the best for Blue Rain. This, I understand very well. Yu Wenzu continued. However, quote, he paused, before continuing. Even if it is for our benefit, forgive us for being unable to accept this sort of nonsense. Ha. Quote. At that, Huang Shaoshan burst out laughing. A year's worth of effort had come to nothing. Yet in this time of intense unhappiness, Huang Shaoshan was actually laughing. But he was only laughing for the sake of it. The sound masked his acute feelings of bitterness and resentment. He'd been wanting to say this for a while. What do you guys understand? What gives you the right to spout this nonsense at us? While Huang Shaoshan was laughing, the reporters were stunned. They never would have thought after giving such sincere thanks, Yu Wenzu would directly and mercilessly call their words nonsense. Some of them stood up, prepared to retaliate, but Yu Wenzu's voice stopped them. Beginning from the very first critic in this press conference, Yu Wenzu began his replies, one after another. 15. In total, there had been 15 reporters who had stood up and expressed vehemently their personal, disparaging views on Blue Rain's performance. Yu Wenzu didn't miss a single one, and even followed the correct order in which they had spoken. One by one, he clearly, logically, systematically refuted their observations and opinions. And thus, one after another. 15 reporters felt their ears go red. Yu Wenzu's rebuttals were so sensible that the reporters were surprised when he suddenly finished. And then, they all had only one feeling, that they truly understood nothing, that they truly were only speaking nonsense. This was far more complex and high-end than they had imagined. And after listening to Yu Wenzu's analysis, the problems that they had brought up felt unbelievably shallow. It was as though they were a crowd of noobs, charging towards someone and yelling, "Why didn't you use 10 formless phantom blades to make 100 combo to kill the opponent?" Quote. And that person would laugh, and pat their heads, and kindly reply that formless phantom blade has a cooldown, you can only use it once, you can't chain together 10. Even after having their arguments torn apart, not a single one of the reporters reacted angrily to being shamed like this. Because Yu Wenzu's counters were truly too accurate, they simply couldn't find a foothold to reply. When Yu Wenzu finished speaking, the scene once again returned to silence. Then, Yu Wenzu surveyed the crowd one last time. Thank you, everyone. We will meet next season. And with that, Team Blue Rain departed. And about what happened in this post-match press conference, not a single reporter was willing to write. In the end, this match report was simply a collection of outside descriptions, without anything about the emotions and attitudes of the Blue Rain players. These reporters all shut their mouths, but that wouldn't stop other people from speaking. The reporters who had undergone this rebuttal, upon seeing the comments made by others, suddenly felt that those critics were as pathetic as they themselves had been earlier. Those critiques and analysis were just like the vehement statements they had made during the press conference. Not a single one hit the nail on the head. It was because their skill wasn't high enough. And now, these reporters knew how these critiques were viewed through professional eyes. It was nonsense. All this time, there was simply too much of this kind of nonsense. Because this was a new circle, those who truly had high-end skills were still participating in the league as players. Not many had joined the other aspects of this industry after their retirement. The media workers were mostly just ordinary fans, and some might have even been forced by their job to learn about Glory. Their so-called specialist eyes simply weren't at the professional level, especially for the playoffs. Too much of the match content here, they just couldn't understand. To the pro players, their confident assertions were simply laughable. Yet they weren't self-aware. They ran about like the emperor wearing his new clothes, cheerfully streaking, until yesterday, Yu Wenzu quietly nudged a few of them, and told them, "You're not wearing any clothes, don't run around, be careful of catching a cold." They really were catching cold. And there were quite a number of them. To these people, the mountains of comments were simply confused and invalid. But they had no way of pointing it out, because they only learned a few principles from Yu Wenzu's words. That didn't mean that they had put on clothes, it just meant that they would no longer run around on the street naked. And Team Blue Rain, because of their captain's powerful performance during the press conference, were completely deaf to these comments. They knew much more clearly than these people where the true problems lay. Did they need to listen to the opinions of these outsiders? Break begins today. After the match, the first sentence that Team Blue Rain heard from their captain was this one. "As for the rest, we'll speak of it next season," said Yu Wenzu. Yes. WuxaWorldAudio.com. Everyone nodded. Even if this had been a bit ugly, this wasn't the first time they had failed. As for where the problems lay, there were no idiots in Blue Rain. The words the captain had said yesterday at the press conference, they wouldn't treat it as a mere tongue-lashing. He had simply used the most powerful moment to say those things. To review the recordings of their losing match while still carrying the depression of defeat, only strengthened the effects. Seizing opportunities was always Blue Rain's specialty, whether on or off the battlefield. See you next season. Everyone bid each other to take care, and Blue Rain's players began their breaks. But not everyone left. "You're not leaving." Yu Wenzu looked at Huang Shaoshan. "I want to watch until the very end. As soon as there's a chance, I'm going to go up and roast the hell out of that guy." Huang Shaoshan said firmly. "Then what if there isn't a chance?" Yu Wenzu asked, with a laugh. "If there isn't, then I can only watch him continue to be proud until the end," said Huang Shaoshan. Everyone wanted to be proud until the end. Blue Rain no longer had this chance. And that night, another team lost their chance as well. Thunderclap fought their away game against Tiny Herb, and ultimately lost the match. Having lost both games, they too were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Seo Shichen and his teammates had played an admirable regular season this year, but they still had yet to ever break past the first round of playoffs. Thunderclap's individual strength still wasn't high enough. This was what the outside world said. Their team's strength didn't lose to any powerhouse, but Thunderclap's performance in the individual rounds indeed wasn't very reassuring. The playoffs only made this more obvious. Once upon a time, in order to gain more powerful helpers, Seo Shichen had left Thunderclap. But this time, amidst these voices, "Do you hear that? They're all saying that our individual strength isn't enough. Train well this summer, all of you. Next season, we're going to give them a scare in the individual rounds." Quote. This was what Seo Shichen said before break. This time, he wouldn't think that his teammates weren't enough. He would rise together with his teammates, and together they would strive for a victory that belonged to them. Break 37 consecutive wins. Dai Yankee jumped up and shouted. Seo Shichen's legs shuddered. "Watch yourself." He glared at Dai Yankee. Encouragement was good, but it couldn't be absurd. Was that even something that a human could accomplish? End chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1480. Information, audio source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1480, Information. Translator, Nomiyami. Editor, Nomiyami. TLN, please go back and reread the previous chapter. It's been updated with the actual translation. The quarterfinals of the playoffs had come to a close. All 4 games ended in 2 rounds. Samsara, Tyranny, Happy and Tiny Herb advanced to the semi-finals. Among them, Samsara, Tyranny and Tiny Herb were all members of the top 4 in the regular season. Happy, at number 6, was the only one to have successfully turned the tables, knocking out the regular season's third-place Blue Rain. This match, especially the second round at Blue Rain's home stadium, was the match that had the most discussion. The group arena was alright. It was clear that Blue Rain had made careful arrangements with their map choice. In the end, it was because their plan for Yishu was completely destroyed that they fell behind. However, the Team Competition brought Blue Rain a lot of disgruntlement and jeers, to the point where this match was the hottest topic with the end of the first round. By now, Team Blue Rain's holiday had already started. Regarding the last round of the playoffs, their captain Yuan Zhu had said everything there was to say in the press conference already. Next up was Tyranny vs Happy and Samsara vs Tiny Herb. The playoffs had entered an even more tense atmosphere. None of these 4 teams dared relax for even a moment. Club Tyranny. Blue Rain hadn't bothered reviewing the heavily criticized Team Competition at Blue Rain's home game against Happy. On the other hand, Tyranny began looking over that match ended. The Team Competition of that match had become the main focus of their pre-match preparations. As for who it was they were studying, it obviously wasn't Blue Rain, who had been knocked out of the competition already, but Happy. Happy, who they were facing in the next round. Happy, who had wiped the floor with Blue Rain on their home turf, drawing harsh criticism of Blue Rain from all over. Those criticisms, to them, were unreasonable. However, they didn't have the time to spare to explain for Blue Rain, and it wasn't Blue Rain they cared about anyways. Happy. The discussions and research these 3 days were all about Happy, because Happy had revealed all too much in this match, too much that had been kept hidden or vague in previous matches. The entire team was gathered in the conference room, the match VOD playing on the projector. They had lost count of how many times they had watched and analyzed the match. But none of the Tyranny members held any hint of impatience in their expressions, all focused as if they were in a match themselves. Zhang Xinji, their vice-captain, Tyranny's tactician, stood in front of the projector. He faced the projection as well, watching the recording silently with everyone else. The 2 teams spawned and headed out. The viewpoint in the VOD was completely focused on Team Happy. After 3 consecutive days of studying the match VOD, the file they were using was no longer the original. Speaking of which, as Happy's 5 characters advanced, a red circle appeared over Dancing Rain, flashing a few times. They didn't stop watching because of this. They had studied this part several times already. Su Mucheng. Many people thought her performance wasn't as spectacular after joining Happy. At first they thought that it was because she was in a new team and had to familiarize herself with her new teammates and characters. However, throughout the whole season, Su Mucheng hadn't made any particularly spectacular improvement. However, in these 3 days at Tyranny, Zhang Xinji had came to a very certain conclusion. Su Mucheng's performed spectacularly, but her brilliance was integrated into the details. The annotations done for Dancing Rain's positioning at the beginning was emphasis on her choice of position in their formation as well as the adjustments she made. You wouldn't be able to see anything from just watching one character, you had to look at it from the whole. The moment the red annotations appeared, Steamed Bun Invasion and Boundless Sea had both deviated from their formation. This deviation wasn't a result of the two not being in sync, but it was because the two characters had been met with obstacles they couldn't leap over in their linear path, so they had to make their own adjustments. This was a natural, logical move that couldn't be more ordinary. However, Sumu Chung adjusted herself with them. Dancing Rain, with no obstacles in her path, adjusted her position as Steamed Bun Invasion and Boundless Sea swerved around trees. The scene was paused. Happy froze with the two characters swerving around trees and Dancing Rain in her now adjusted position. A seemingly inconsequential detail, but this maintained the completeness of Happy's formation. Zhang Xinji turned and said to everyone, "These movements are woven into this match from start to finish, and we'll come to it again. This is just to make sure you all realize that Sumu Chung can already do this subconsciously, even for something so inconsequential," Zhang Xinji explained. In other words, I think that Sumu Chung is no longer just Yi Xu's best partner, but all of Happy's best partner. After 3 days of analysis, this was the first time Zhang Xinji had given such a straightforward explanation. She's become more comprehensive, even more of a team player, Lin Jingyan said. As veterans, none of them were unfamiliar with Sumu Chung, and with this new information, they would immediately compare it to their original understanding of Sumu Chung and notice the difference. For the Sumu Chung of the past, not only did she often forget everyone but Yi Xiu, but her support was imbalanced. She placed too much importance on Yi Xiu's decisions, leading to her inability to maximize her impact in the battle. This was because Yi Xiu wasn't always the best target for her to support, and giving support to her other teammates would have been better to open up the situation. Now, she no longer had any of these problems. Soon enough, the scene arrived at the first clash between the two sides. Blue Rain took advantage of their tailwind to launch an assault. At this point, Zhang Xinji had switched the shot to Sumu Chung's perspective. With this first-person perspective, everyone felt as if they were in the tense atmosphere of the match themselves. Sumu Chung's camera view was constantly in motion, things appearing repeatedly in the shot, some far, some close. Then, it suddenly froze. It was Zhang Xinji who paused it. In the scene, Blue Rain's Blade Master duo had already charged into their formation with such great coordination that even Yi Xiu couldn't stop them. As for Sumu Chung, all of this occurred under her eyes, and she had the chance to steady the situation for Happy, but she didn't. Sumu Chung's view, instead, kept a close eye on Yu Wenzu's Swaxar. What if it was the Sumu Chung of the past? What would she do? Zhang Xinji inquired. The veterans all fell silent. The old Sumu Chung would most likely coordinate with Yi Xiu to take on Blue Rain's Blade Master duo. But what about the Sumu Chung of today? Happy's disarray here was planned, and Sumu Chung's decisions influenced Happy's plans for this stage. If she had coordinated with Yi Xiu to defeat Blue Rain's Blade Master duo, then this situation here would be difficult to achieve, Zhang Xinji said. Tyranny's members knew the scenario that followed like the backs of their hands after 3 days of analysis. Happy had an order to their chaos, while Blue Rain, responsible for scattering them, sunk into their chaos like into quicksand. Of course, every member of Happy had contributed their efforts to this, but even after 3 days of studying, the role Sumu Chung played seemed to have a deeper layer to it. Blue Rain wasn't cautious enough of Sumu Chung. Quote, as Zhang Xinji talked, the projection cut to a collection of strung-together highlights. Scene after scene flashed by. This was a video of the times Sumu Chung used Dancing Rain's range advantage to disrupt Blue Rain's plan. As for Blue Rain, they weren't watching Sumu Chung very closely, so it made Sumu Chung's job much easier. This sentence was basically Zhang Xinji's criticism on Blue Rain's performance. This was a criticism that hadn't appeared in that cacophony of voices. WuxRWorldAudio.com. However, Zhang Xinji, who had managed to catch on to this, didn't act proud or anything. This was a trail they had only found after 3 days of intense study. Su Mucheng's transformation was very fragmented. It would be very hard to notice without combing through the data thoroughly. Zhang Xinji could only be thankful that there was this match to provide him with this fragmented information. It seems like we had better keep a closer watch on her, Zhang Jiale said. Or obstruct her view. Zhang Xinji gazed at Zhang Jiale as he said this. The veterans didn't need to say much more. When Zhang Jiale brought this up, it was because he already understood that he was the one in tyranny who was most appropriate for cutting Su Mucheng off from her allies. Dazzling Hundred Blossoms had ranged attacks, and the Hundred Blossoms style was doubtlessly the best at disrupting Su Mucheng, no matter if it was used on the field or on Su Mucheng directly. And so, a strategic choice was decided. Outsiders would probably never guess that the first-person tyranny brought up as a key opponent to keep watch on would be Su Mucheng, who didn't seem to shine so brightly amongst the rest of Happy. This wasn't the only choice tyranny had settled on in these 3 days. The recording continued, and soon came to a chaotic free-for-all between the two sides. Steamed Bun Invasion had been Blue Rain's attack target for a while, but after a few exchanges, Steamed Bun worked together with Boundless Sea to kidnap their healer. What was Happy's reasoning behind sending out Steamed Bun Invasion? This was one of the many questions tyranny was analyzing these 3 days. The choice of player and character was the best reflection of a team's intentions. An unpredictable and unstable player like Steamed Bun wasn't the strict Zhang Xinji style. Compared to Yu Wenzu, he was interested in why Happy chose a player that might mess up and cost them their victory at such a crucial map. Ye Zhu was there to compensate. That was something that Yu Wenzu realized during the match, as well as something tyranny quickly figured out. However, this only meant that Happy had the ability to neutralize the risk of using Steamed Bun Invasion, but nothing of why Steamed Bun Invasion was important. It wasn't like they'd send him up to where at Ye Zhu's focus. As the recording arrived to where Blue Rain's healer Soul Speaker was kidnapped, the projection once again cut to a collection of highlights. A collection of highlights of Steamed Bun Invasion attacking Soul Speaker. Conclusion: Steamed Bun was a counter to Zhu Jingxi's Soul Speaker. The Brawler class had many ways to disrupt and interrupt their opponents. And Paladins with their strong defense had many ways to protect themselves, so a class like the Brawler was required to CC them. The shot paused at a scene where Steamed Bun Invasion launched a tyrannical chain punch and knocked Soul Speaker down. "It looks overkill, doesn't it?" Zhang Xinji said, pointing at the shot. However, if he didn't do something so overkill, then a single guard of virtues or angels would be able to turn the tables. This Steamed Bun Invasion feels really enthusiastic when it comes to things like this. Feelings. Zhang Xinji would never rely on feelings for something like this, yet even he had to resort to an ambiguous term like this. He just couldn't understand Steamed Bun's end chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1481. Focal point. Audio source: WuxRWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1481. Focal point. Translator: Nomyami. Editor: Nomyami. Su Mucheng, Bao Rangxing. Tyranny had studied Happy for 3 days, and now, it was time for them to conclude their findings. They outlined a summary of these two players' performances in their match against Blue Rain. This obviously wasn't all the information that they had obtained. Under Zhang Xinji's meticulous guidance, they analyzed every piece of information. "What should we do?" Everyone had the same thought, much like how Zhang Jiale had tacitly understood earlier the role that he would need to play. However, because of Zhang Xinji's caution and seriousness, even Han Wenqing, who had known Zhang Xinji for many years, had to confirm that everyone was on the same page. Everything was conducted anxiously but orderly. Tyranny, Samsara, Tiny Herb, and Happy, who had entered the quarterfinals despite this being their first year in the league. The next step was the finals. The next step was the Championship Cup itself. At this moment, who could relax? Who could give up? Every year, when it reached this point in time, the atmosphere would turn abnormally heavy. Even the wars between in-game players would turn exceptionally heated. The teams that made it to the semi-finals were all teams with a strong fan base. When expectations were high, people would often become sensitive and weak. Since 4 teams had qualified for the quarterfinals, that meant 4 teams had been eliminated. None of the 4 eliminated teams were weak teams. How could any of the fans be content with these results? 1 day, 2 days. Day after day of tension passed. The first round of the semi-finals was about to begin. The first round would be Happy's home game against Tyranny. It would take place in Happy's Stadium in City H. Happy's home stadium was formerly Excellent Era's. In the Glory Alliance, there were no 2 teams with more enmity towards each other than Excellent Era and Tyranny. When Excellent Era was relegated from the league, countless people thought that the Alliance had now lost a piece of history. Afterwards, Excellent Era disbanded and went away. It seemed like this piece of history would never return. But then, Happy joined the Alliance. Their leader was Excellent Era's former captain, Yi Xiu. Happy also succeeded Excellent Era's home stadium in City H. For a moment, Tyranny's fans took their hostility towards Excellent Era and placed it all onto Yi Xiu alone. Of course, Yi Xiu played an important part in the relationship between the 2 teams. It was just that Happy was Happy. Say that Happy was the continuation of Excellent Era. How could that be said? In the Challenger League, Happy was the one who eliminated Excellent Era and led to their disbandment. Fortunately, Excellent Era was rescued in the end, leaving a few key remnants of the organization. The new Excellent Era had won the Challenger League this season and would be returning to the Alliance. Beside him was also a group of loyal fans who would never abandon the team. But there were many people who felt like Happy was more like the original Excellent Era, even if they were the team that led to Excellent Era's disbandment. It was because Happy took over the original Excellent Era's home stadium. It was because Happy's captain was Excellent Era's former captain, Yi Xiu. The Yi Xiu that had founded Excellent Era's dynasty. The Yi Xiu that had earned the title of Battle God for one autumn leaf. No matter what, these were all of the past, things that had already become reality. These achievements would never be separated from Yi Xiu, nor would they ever be forgotten. As a result, when Happy and Tyranny met in the playoffs, many people brought up the often talked about subject of old enemies. Excellent Era. It wouldn't be good to talk more about one person's name. Yi Xiu. Everyone kept on talking about Yi Xiu. Even Su Mucheng, who used to be a core player on Excellent Era, was mentioned less. After all, when Excellent Era won their 3 championships, Su Mucheng hadn't been a part of the team yet, and most of the enmity between Excellent Era and Tyranny had been established during that period of time. Su Mucheng happened to join the season that Tyranny beat Excellent Era. As such, the hostility towards Su Mucheng from Tyranny's fans was naturally far less than Yi Xiu, who had led the team that had eliminated Tyranny 3 times in a row. The match between Happy and Tyranny was discussed heavily by the media, who hyped up the match by flipping through talking point after talking point. The day of the match was about to arrive, and the sight of the fans that had assembled at the stadium was astonishing to see. Although Happy was a popular team nowadays, their home game against Blue Rain was nowhere near as crazy. As the beginning of the match approached, the number of people gathered at the stadium was so large that not only were there no empty seats, it might even be hard to find space outside the venue. This sort of scene could only be found before when Excellent Era played against Tyranny. Had City H's Glory fans regarded Happy as an alternative to Excellent Era? It was a reasonable possibility, but it shouldn't be to this extent. After all, Happy defeating Excellent Era in the Challenger League was a fact that no loyal Excellent Era fan could ever forget. There were Excellent Era fans that hated Happy. There were Excellent Era fans that were indifferent about Happy. But those who liked Happy could only be ones who liked fads. Then, where did all of these Glory fans gathered here come from? The playoffs was a popular topic among the media. There was, of course, special reports about the various histories behind the teams. Just taking a look at a few articles would give a good overview of the situation. It was true that many of the people gathered here didn't have any love or Happy, but their hostility towards Tyranny was as strong as ever. That was why they came. Not to cheer on Happy, but to see Tyranny fall. There was no Excellent Era these days, but many Excellent Era fans continued their tradition of hating on Tyranny. Many of the reporters that were here to conduct interviews cited this scene. Although Excellent Era had already been gone from the Alliance for 2 years, their influence remained. The players could be gone, the characters could be changed, the stadium could be replaced, but the history that they had left behind would always remain. Excellent Era was a memory, one whose glory would never be forgotten. And their enmity with Tyranny was a part of that memory. As a result, there was now another point of discussion. Happy was the one that led to Excellent Era's downfall, yet now they were going to carry on the tradition. It was a very contradictory situation. Of course, there were no lack of optimists in the interviews. They cheerfully expressed that they were here today to see the drama. It didn't matter who won. Either way, they would be able to vent their anger. All sorts of topics were pushed to the peak of attention because of this match. There were even fans who were certain that they had seen Huang Shaoshan in the crowd. Others claimed to see Yuan Zhu, Yang Kong, Tang Hao. In short, the pro players who were no longer in contention for the championships all seemed to be somewhere in the crowd. Who would win? Who would lose? Everyone had come here to see the answer to this question. That night at 8 o'clock, at the sold-out Seocean Stadium, many of the Glory fans gathered outside without seats did not leave. They didn't need to appreciate the course of the match. Just being able to know the results firsthand was enough for the wait to be worth it. Inside the venue's prep rooms, the two teams were getting ready for the match. "It's really lively today, huh?" Fang Rui was relaxed, talking to everyone as if this were normal. Team Happy had done what they had always done. At around 7, they left the Internet Cafe, ready to cross the street to Seocean Stadium. But when they saw the giant crowd outside, they got scared. It'd be a miracle if famous players like them could make it inside without any trouble. In the end, Chen Guo urgently contacted the stadium employees. Seocean Stadium had hosted Glory events for many years. They had experienced the rivalry between Excellent Era and Tyranny and were familiar with handling it. As soon as they took Chen Guo's phone call, they immediately told him that a special passageway had been prepared for them. The stadium even sent out a staff member to guide Happy inside. WuxaWorldAudio.com. In fact, they already knew that Team Happy was right across street from them. When they got inside the venue, the sea of people outside the stadium left a deep impression on them. Yizhu and Sima Chung weren't too surprised. They had been a part of Excellent Era and had experienced it before. But even Fang Rui, an all-star, had never seen such an army before. As a matter of fact, despite having more experience than the rookies, he felt more surprised than them. Why aren't these people leaving? The match is almost about to start, Chen Guo said. She was too naive. Chen Guo thought that those Glory fans outside were hoping for a ticket, and since the match was about to start, they clearly hadn't gotten any tickets and should be leaving. How could she have known that their passion was no longer something that could be stopped by a ticket to the match? Just waiting outside, awaiting for the results with everyone else, was a type of joy to these people. I just know that the crowd gathered here today probably isn't here to support us. Don't feel too pressured by them, Yizhu said solemnly. Chen Guo stared blankly. His intentions were good, but how come the logic didn't seem to make sense? Tyranny has this many fans here? Tang Rou asked. No matter how much of a rookie she was, she knew quite a bit about the scene now. Their opponent was Team Tyranny. And having worked at Happy Internet Cafe in City H, Tang Rou knew about the people of this city's relationship with Team Tyranny long before she became serious about playing Glory. They're probably here hoping for Tyranny to fall, Yizhu said. Then, aren't they hoping for us to win? Tang Rou said. They'll probably be happy if we lose too, Yizhu said. Tang Rou was smart. She quickly understood. Too bad we won't, she said. That's why I'm saying we should just treat them as if they didn't exist, Yizhu said. Just as he said this, they heard a knock on their door. The staff were calling the two teams to get ready to go on stage. Yizhu led the way out of the room and came across Team Tyranny's captain and his old rival, Han Wenqing, who was also leading his team out. They looked at each other face to face, without any expression. Soon, the two teams lined up next to each other in the passageway. When are you going to retire? Yizhu suddenly asked Han Wenqing an especially depressing question. It's still early. Han Wenqing's gaze was firm. You still want to win a championship? Yizhu smirked. You've got no chance this year. Humph. Han Wenqing snorted. Yizhu turned his head and gave an upward nod at the third Tyranny player in line. You've got no chance at a fifth second place finish either. Zhang Jiale wished he could give Yizhu 10 middle fingers. End chapter.